The hot summer sun was setting behind the hills as Marcus Williams drove his old pickup truck down Highway 67. The truck was 15 years old and made loud noises, but it was all Marcus could afford. He wiped the sweat from his face with the back of his hand. The air conditioning had stopped working 3 months ago, and he did not have money to fix it yet. Marcus was tired after working all day at the Golden Diner restaurant. He had been laying new tiles in their kitchen since early morning. His back hurt, and his hands were covered in small cuts from handling the rough tiles. At 35 years old, Marcus had been running his small construction business for 10 years. He took any job he could find to pay for his family's needs. The work was hard, but Marcus never complained. He had learned from his grandmother that honest work was something to be proud of. She used to tell him, "Baby, keep your head up and work hard. Good things come to good people." Marcus carried these words with him every day, even when money was tight and bills were piling up. As Marcus drove through the empty countryside, he thought about his family waiting at home. His wife Janet would have dinner ready, and his 2 children, Malik and Zara, would want to hear about his day. Malik was 8 years old and loved hearing stories about construction work. Zara was 6 and always asked if Daddy brought her anything special. Marcus smiled thinking about them, even though he was too tired to bring any surprises today. The road was quiet with very few cars. Marcus liked this peaceful drive home. It gave him time to think and plan for tomorrow's work. He had 3 more days of work at the diner, and then he hoped to start a small bathroom renovation job for Mrs. Peterson. Every job mattered, because winter was coming, and construction work would slow down. Suddenly, Marcus saw something ahead on the side of the road. As he got closer, he could see it was a young woman with her thumb out trying to get a ride. She looked to be in her early 20s with long blonde hair that was messy and tangled. Her clothes looked expensive but dirty, like she had been outside for a long time. The woman wore designer jeans that were torn at the knees and white sneakers that were covered with dust and dirt. Her shirt was once white but now had stains on it. She had a small backpack on the ground next to her feet. The way she stood showed that she was tired and maybe scared. Marcus slowed down his truck. Most people would not stop to pick up strangers, especially when it was getting dark and the road was empty. It could be dangerous. But Marcus had been taught to help others when he could. His grandmother always said, "If you can help somebody, you help them. You never know when you might need help yourself." Marcus had grown up poor and knew what it felt like to need help. There had been times when strangers had helped his family when they had nowhere else to turn. He remembered being a child and having his family's car break down on a cold night. A kind man had stopped and helped them, asking for nothing in return. The young woman looked up hopefully as Marcus pulled his truck over to the side of the road. Her face showed relief, like she had been waiting there for a long time. She quickly picked up her backpack and walked toward the truck. Up close, Marcus could see that she looked exhausted and worried about something. Marcus rolled down his window and called out, "You need a ride somewhere, miss?" The woman's eyes filled with gratitude. "Yes, please, thank you so much for stopping." Her voice was different from what Marcus expected. She spoke like someone who had gone to expensive schools, not like someone who would be hitchhiking on an empty highway. "Where are you trying to get to?" Marcus asked as the woman opened the passenger door. She hesitated for a moment, looking around nervously before answering. "Just to the next town over, if that's okay. Millbrook, if you know where that is." Marcus nodded. "I know Millbrook. It's about 30 miles from here. Climb on in." The woman got into the truck and put her backpack on the floor by her feet. "I'm Sarah," she said quietly. "Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it." "I'm Marcus," he replied, pulling back onto the highway. "No problem at all. Everybody needs help sometimes." As they drove, Marcus noticed that Sarah kept looking in the side mirror, like she was worried someone might be following them. She seemed nervous and jumpy. When other cars passed them, she would look closely at the drivers, then relax when she saw they were strangers. "You been waiting out there long?" Marcus asked, trying to make conversation. "A few hours," Sarah answered, not giving many details. "Not many people stop to help anymore. Marcus could tell she did not want to talk much about her situation, so he did not push for more information. But he was curious about this young woman. Her clothes were expensive, even though they were dirty. Her shoes cost more than Marcus made in a week. Her backpack was a designer brand that he had seen in store windows but could never afford. "You from around here?" Marcus asked. Sarah shook her head. "Not really. I'm just traveling through." There was something about the way she said it that made Marcus think she was running away from something rather than traveling to something. She kept her hands folded in her lap and looked out the window at the dark countryside passing by. Marcus tried to make her feel comfortable. He talked about simple things like the weather and how pretty the sunset looked over the hills. Sarah listened but did not say much. She seemed surprised by Marcus's friendly manner, like she was not used to people being kind without wanting something in return. "What kind of work do you do?" Sarah asked after they had been driving for about 10 minutes. "I run a small construction business," Marcus explained. "Mostly small jobs like bathroom renovations, kitchen tile work, fixing porches, things like that. Today I was working at a restaurant in town putting in new kitchen floors." Sarah nodded, seeming interested. "That sounds like hard work." "It is, but it's honest work," Marcus said. "I get to help people make their homes and businesses better. Plus I'm my own boss, which is nice even when money gets tight." Marcus noticed that Sarah looked confused when he mentioned money being tight, like she did not understand what that meant. This made him even more curious about her background, but he kept his questions to himself. As they got closer to Millbrook, Sarah became more quiet and seemed worried about something. She kept checking her phone, which Marcus noticed was a very expensive model that most people could not afford. "You got somewhere to stay in Millbrook?" Marcus asked as they entered the town limits. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not sure yet," she finally admitted. Marcus felt concerned about leaving this young woman alone in a strange town at night with nowhere to go. His grandmother's voice echoed in his head about helping people when you can. But he also had his own family to think about and did not know if it was safe to get more involved with a stranger. The truck rolled slowly through the small town of Millbrook as Marcus tried to decide what to do next. Marcus could not leave Sarah alone in Millbrook at night with nowhere to go. His heart would not let him drive away from someone who clearly needed help. He made a decision that would change everything. "Look, I don't know your situation," Marcus said as they sat in his truck on the quiet main street of Millbrook. "But it's getting late and you don't have anywhere to stay. I got a couch at my house if you need a safe place for the night." Sarah looked surprised by his offer. Her eyes filled with tears and she seemed shocked that a stranger would be so kind to her. I don't want to be any trouble," she said quietly. "No trouble at all," Marcus replied. "My wife Janet might ask some questions, but she's got a good heart. We can't let you sleep on the streets." Sarah nodded gratefully. "Just for one night, if that's okay. I can figure something out tomorrow." Marcus turned his truck around and headed back toward his home in Oakville. During the drive, he called Janet on his old cell phone to explain the situation. Janet was not happy about bringing a stranger home, especially with their children in the house, but she trusted Marcus's judgment. When they arrived at Marcus's small house, Janet was waiting on the front porch. She was a strong woman who worked as a nurse at the local clinic. Janet had learned to be careful about people, but she also believed in helping those in need. She looked Sarah up and down, taking note of her expensive but dirty clothes. "This is Sarah," Marcus said as they got out of the truck. "Sarah, this is my wife Janet." "Thank you for letting me stay," Sarah said politely. "I really appreciate your kindness." Janet's expression softened a little. "Come on inside. You look like you haven't eaten in a while." The Williams family's house was small but clean and comfortable. The furniture was old but well cared for. Family pictures covered the walls, showing Marcus and Janet's wedding day and many photos of their children growing up. Sarah looked around, with interest, seeming to notice every detail. 8-year-old Malik and 6-year-old Zara were curious about their unexpected guest. They peeked around corners and whispered to each other about the pretty lady with blonde hair. Sarah smiled at them, and they slowly warmed up to her presence. Janet made Sarah a plate of leftover chicken and rice while Marcus showed her where she could sleep on the living room couch. Sarah ate hungrily, like she had not had a good meal in days. As she ate, she complimented Janet's cooking in ways that seemed unusual. "This is delicious," Sarah said. "The seasoning is perfect. Did you use fresh thyme and rosemary?" Janet looked surprised. "Yes, I did. How did you know?" Sarah paused, realizing she had said something that revealed more about herself than she wanted. I like to cook sometimes," she said quickly. But Marcus and Janet both noticed that Sarah knew about expensive herbs and cooking techniques that most people their age would not know about. Janet used those herbs because she grew them in her small garden, but they were not common ingredients for most families. The next morning, Sarah insisted on helping with breakfast. She moved around the kitchen like someone who was used to cooking, but her techniques were fancy and complicated. She made perfect scrambled eggs with herbs and created beautiful fruit arrangements that looked like something from a restaurant. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Janet asked, watching Sarah work. Sarah became uncomfortable. My mother taught me some things," she said, but her answer did not sound convincing. Over the next few days, Sarah continued staying with the Williams family while she claimed to be figuring out her next move. She was helpful around the house, always offering to clean, cook, or help with the children. But strange things kept happening that made Marcus and Janet more curious about who she really was. When Sarah did laundry, she was shocked by how old and worn the washing machine was. She kept trying to press buttons that did not exist, like she was used to much fancier appliances. When Janet showed her how to use their simple machine, Sarah looked amazed that people still used such basic equipment. One evening, while helping Zara with her homework, Sarah casually mentioned attending private schools and having tutors for different subjects. When Zara asked what a tutor was, Sarah realized she had revealed too much about her background again. "Some kids get extra help with school," Sarah explained quickly, but Marcus overheard and wondered why someone who hitchhikes would have had private tutors. The most telling moment came when Marcus was paying bills at the kitchen table. He was using a calculator and carefully writing down numbers, trying to figure out how to pay for both his truck repairs and new school clothes for the kids. Sarah sat down across from him and watched him work. "You can only choose one?" Sarah asked, looking confused. "That's how it works when money is tight," Marcus explained. "We have to decide what's most important each month." Sarah stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "But what if you just bought both?" Marcus looked up from his bills. "With what money? We don't have enough for everything we need." The confusion on Sarah's face was genuine. She truly did not understand how families had to choose between necessary things because of money. This was not normal for someone her age unless she had never experienced financial limits in her life. "I could help," Sarah offered suddenly. "I could pay for the truck repairs." Marcus and Janet exchanged looks. "Sarah, that's very kind, but truck repairs cost over $1,000. Where would you get that kind of money?" Sarah's face went red, and she realized she had made another mistake. I thought maybe." That same night, Marcus discovered Sarah in the backyard talking quietly on an expensive smartphone that she had been hiding from the family. The phone was the newest model, worth more money than Marcus made in several months. He could hear parts of her conversation, and what he heard made him very curious. "I can't come back yet," Sarah was saying. "They'll lock me up again." "No, I found somewhere safe. These people are different. They don't want anything from me." When Sarah noticed Marcus standing nearby, she quickly ended the call and hid the phone behind her back. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked gently. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I know I've been lying to you about some things. You and Janet have been so kind to me, and I've been keeping secrets." Marcus sat down on the back porch steps next to her. "We all got secrets, Sarah. But if you're in some kind of trouble, maybe we can help you figure it out." Sarah looked at this kind man who had opened his home to a stranger. She could see that Marcus genuinely cared about her well-being, not because he wanted something from her, but because helping people was just who he was. "It's complicated," Sarah said softly. Most problems are, Marcus replied. But sometimes talking about them makes them less scary. Sarah took a deep breath. She was tired of running and tired of lying to the first people who had shown her real kindness in a long time. She looked at Marcus's honest face and made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. Marcus, she said quietly, I need to tell you the truth about who I really am. Marcus waited patiently as Sarah struggled to find the right words. The evening air was cool, and crickets chirped in the darkness around them. Sarah held her expensive phone in her hands, turning it over and over as she gathered courage to speak. My real name is Sarah Elizabeth Hawthorne, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus did not recognize the name, but something about the way she said it made him think it was important. Okay, he said gently. Is there more you want to tell me? Sarah laughed, but it was not a happy sound. My family. We have a lot of money, Marcus. More money than you could imagine. My grandfather built a business empire, and when he died, he left everything to me in a trust fund. Marcus felt confused. If Sarah was rich, why was she hitchhiking on empty highways and sleeping on his couch? I don't understand. If you have money, why are you running? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Because my parents want to take it all away from me. They want to have me declared mentally sick so they can control my inheritance forever. The words hit Marcus like a punch. He had heard of rich families fighting over money, but the idea of parents trying to destroy their own child for wealth seemed impossible to believe. Tell me what happened, Marcus said softly. Sarah took a shaky breath and began her story. She explained that she had lived her entire life in a mansion in Connecticut, surrounded by servants and bodyguards. Her parents, Richard and Victoria Hawthorne, had controlled every aspect of her life since she was born. They chose her clothes, her friends, her school, and even her hobbies. I was never allowed to leave the house alone, Sarah continued. They said it was for my safety, but really they were afraid I might meet people who would tell me the truth about how normal families live. Sarah explained that she had always been different from her parents. While they cared only about money and power, she wanted to help people and make the world better. She had dreams of starting charities and helping families like Marcus's, but her parents said those ideas were foolish and naive. 3 weeks ago, I was walking past my father's office when I heard him talking to lawyers, Sarah said, her voice getting stronger as she spoke. They were planning to have doctors say I was mentally unstable. They wanted to put me in a private hospital and keep me there while they took control of my trust fund. Marcus felt sick hearing this. Your own parents wanted to lock you up? Sarah nodded. They said I was too idealistic and that I would waste the family fortune on stupid charity projects. They hired doctors who would say whatever they wanted them to say. The plan was to have me committed within a month. Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. His own parents had been poor, but they had loved him and wanted the best for him. The idea of parents betraying their child for money was beyond his understanding. So you ran away, Marcus said. I took some cash from my room and left in the middle of the night, Sarah explained. I've been moving from town to town trying to stay ahead of the private investigators my parents hired to find me. I can't use credit cards or go to hotels because they track everything. Sarah showed Marcus her phone. This is how they keep finding me, but I needed to contact the one lawyer who might help me fight them. He's been trying to find evidence that my parents' plan is illegal. Marcus looked at this young woman who had more money than he could imagine, yet was more trapped and scared than he had ever been in his life of poverty. What will happen if they catch you? They'll take me back, and within days I'll be locked in some private facility, Sarah said. I'll spend the rest of my life as a prisoner while they spend my inheritance, and there won't be anything I can do to stop them. Marcus was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything Sarah had told him. It explained so much about her behavior over the past few days. Her confusion about money problems, her fancy cooking skills, her expensive clothes, and her fear of being followed all made sense now. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. You've been hiding it for days. Sarah looked at him with tears in her eyes. Because you and Janet have shown me more real kindness in 1 week than I received from my own family in 23 years. You didn't help me because you wanted something from me. You helped me because it was the right thing to do." She continued, "I've lived my whole life around people who only cared about my money, servants who were paid to be nice to me, friends who were only interested in expensive gifts, and parents who saw me as a valuable object instead of a person. But you and your family treated me like I mattered as a human being." Marcus felt overwhelmed by Sarah's story. He had picked up what he thought was a poor young woman in trouble, but instead he had found someone with more problems than he could have imagined. Rich or poor, Sarah needed help, and Marcus's grandmother had always taught him that people in need deserved compassion. "What do you want to do now?" Marcus asked. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I can't run forever. Eventually they'll catch me or I'll run out of places to hide. But I also can't go back to being a prisoner in my own family." Marcus thought about his own children sleeping safely in their beds inside the house. He thought about Janet working hard every day to help sick people at the clinic. He thought about all the good people in his community who struggled to pay their bills but would share their last dollar with someone in need. "Maybe there's another way," Marcus said slowly. "Maybe instead of running or hiding, you need to fight back." Sarah looked at him with surprise. "Fight back? How?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted. "But you said you have a lawyer who might help, and you have money that could hire more lawyers. Maybe it's time to stop running and start fighting for what's rightfully yours." Sarah considered his words. "It would be dangerous. My parents have a lot of power and connections. They could make life very difficult for anyone who helps me." Marcus looked at Sarah seriously. "Life's already difficult, Sarah. The question is whether you want to spend it running scared or standing up for yourself." For the first time since Marcus had met her, Sarah smiled with real hope in her eyes. She was tired of being afraid and tired of running. Maybe it was time to stop hiding and start fighting for her freedom and her future. "Will you help me?" Sarah asked quietly. Marcus thought about the risks. He thought about his family and his small business. He thought about the powerful people who might try to hurt him for helping Sarah. Then he thought about his grandmother's words about helping people when you can. "Yes," Marcus said simply. "We'll figure it out together." The next morning, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with Sarah and Janet drinking coffee and making plans. Janet had been shocked to learn about Sarah's real identity, but like her husband, she was more concerned about Sarah's safety than her money. "So let me understand this," Janet said slowly. "Your parents want to steal millions of dollars from you by having you locked up in a hospital?" Sarah nodded. "My trust fund is worth about $50 million. If they can prove I'm mentally unstable, they get complete control over it. They've been planning this for months." Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. $50 million was more money than everyone in his neighborhood would earn in their entire lives combined. Yet Sarah talked about it like it was just another problem to solve. "The lawyer I've been talking to is named David Chen," Sarah continued. "He worked for my grandfather before he died. He's the only person in my family circle who actually cares about what my grandfather wanted." Sarah explained that her grandfather had created the trust fund specifically to help Sarah become independent from her controlling parents. He had seen how they treated her like property instead of a person, and he wanted her to have the freedom to live her own life. "Grandfather put conditions in the trust that my parents hate," Sarah said. "When I turn 25, I get complete control of the money. But if I'm declared mentally incompetent before then, my parents become the trustees, forever." Marcus understood the situation better now. Sarah's parents only had 2 years left to steal her inheritance, so they were getting desperate. That's why they had moved so quickly with their plan to have her hospitalized. "What does this lawyer think we should do?" Marcus asked. Sarah pulled out her expensive phone and dialed a number. After a few rings, a man's voice answered. Sarah put the phone on speaker so Marcus and Janet could hear. "Sarah, thank God you're safe," the voice said. "I've been worried sick about you. Your parents have private investigators looking everywhere." "I'm okay, Mr. Chen. I'm with friends who are helping me. What's the latest news?" David Chen's voice became serious. "Your parents filed papers yesterday claiming you had a mental breakdown and disappeared. They're trying to get a court order to force you into psychiatric evaluation. We need to act fast." Sarah looked at Marcus and Janet with fear in her eyes. "How much time do we have?" "Maybe a week before they can get a judge to sign the order," Chen replied. "But Sarah, we need evidence that their doctors are lying and that your parents are trying to commit fraud. That's very hard to prove." Marcus had an idea. What if Sarah wasn't hiding anymore? What if she came forward publicly and told her story? There was silence on the phone for a moment. Then Chen spoke carefully. "That's very risky, Marcus. Sarah's parents have a lot of influence with media and politicians. They could make her look crazy. But they can't make 50 people look crazy," Marcus said, his plan becoming clearer. "What if Sarah had character witnesses? People who could prove she's perfectly sane and that her parents are the problem?" Sarah looked confused. "I don't have 50 friends, Marcus. I barely had any real friends before I met you." "But I do," Marcus said with growing excitement. "I know dozens of good people in this community. People like Janet who work in healthcare and can speak about mental health. People like Pastor Williams at our church who counsel families in crisis, small business owners, teachers, nurses, construction workers." Janet began to understand Marcus's idea. "You want to create a support network for Sarah, people who can testify that she's sane and that her family is abusive." "Exactly," Marcus said. "Rich people think poor people don't matter. But what if we showed them that regular working people have power too when they stick together?" Over the next few days, Marcus and Sarah worked together to build their plan. Sarah was amazed by how many people in Marcus's community were willing to help a stranger in need. She had never experienced this kind of solidarity before. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the local diner, offered to let Sarah work in her kitchen to prove she could hold a job. Pastor Williams agreed to counsel Sarah and provide professional testimony about her mental health. Dr. Martinez from the free clinic where Janet worked volunteered to give Sarah a complete psychological evaluation. "I don't understand," Sarah said after meeting with another group of Marcus's friends. "Why are all these people helping me? They don't even know me." Marcus smiled. "That's how real community works, Sarah. When someone needs help, we help them. It doesn't matter if they're rich or poor, black or white, from here or somewhere else." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "I want to do something for all of you. I want to help your community the way you're helping me." "What did you have in mind?" Janet asked. Sarah's face lit up with excitement. "Marcus, you told me about wanting to expand your construction business and hire more workers. What if I invested in your company? Not as charity, but as a real business. Partnership?" Marcus looked surprised. "Sarah, that's very generous, but I don't know anything about handling that kind of money." "But I do," Sarah said. "I've been studying business and finance my whole life. My parents made me learn about investments and management, thinking I would just be a quiet little rich girl who did what they told me. But I actually paid attention." Sarah explained her vision. With proper investment, Marcus's small construction business could become a major employer in their community. They could start apprenticeship programs for young people, offer good-paying jobs to families who needed them, and take on bigger projects that would benefit the whole area. "We could build affordable housing," Sarah said excitedly. "We could renovate the old school building and turn it into a community center. We could create jobs that pay well and treat workers with respect." Marcus felt his heart racing with possibilities he had never dared to imagine. "You really think we could do all that?" "I know we can," Sarah said confidently. "But more importantly, we should do it. My grandfather always said that money is only valuable if you use it to make life better for people." Janet looked at her husband with pride. "Marcus, this could change everything for our family and our whole neighborhood." Marcus thought about all the men he knew who struggled to find steady work. He thought about young people in their community who had dreams but no opportunities. He thought about families like his own who worked hard but could never get ahead. "There's just one problem," Marcus said. "If we become business partners, your parents will definitely try to hurt me and my family. They'll say I'm taking advantage of you." Sarah's expression became determined. "Let them try. By the time we're done, we'll have an entire community standing with us, and we'll have proof that I'm not just mentally competent, but that I'm smart enough to make good business decisions and help people." David Chen's voice came through the phone, which had been quiet during their discussion. Sarah, I think you found the perfect strategy. If you can show that you're making sound business investments and helping your community, no judge in the country will believe you're mentally incompetent. Marcus reached across the table and shook Sarah's hand. Partners? Partners, Sarah agreed, with a smile that was brighter than any Marcus had ever seen from her. Neither of them knew that Sarah's parents were closer to finding her than they realized, and that the biggest fight of their lives was about to begin. 1 week later, Marcus was working in his backyard when he saw 3 black cars driving slowly down his street. His heart started beating fast. He had been expecting this day, but it still felt scary when it finally came. Sarah, Marcus called, toward the house. They're here. Sarah came outside with Janet and the children. She looked nervous but determined. Over the past week, she had been meeting with people in Marcus's community and working with lawyer David Chen to prepare for this moment. She was no longer the scared young woman who had been hitchhiking on a dark highway. The 3 cars stopped in front of Marcus's house. Several men in expensive suits got out, followed by an older man and woman who clearly had money and power. These had to be Sarah's parents, Richard and Victoria Hawthorne. They looked angry and disgusted as they stared at Marcus's simple home. Tall man with gray hair approached the front yard. Sarah Elizabeth Hawthorne, he called out in a commanding voice. I am Richard Hawthorne, your father. You will come with us immediately. Sarah stepped forward, no longer hiding behind Marcus. Hello, father. Hello, mother. I see you brought your lawyers and security guards. Victoria Hawthorne looked at her daughter with cold eyes. Look at you, living in this place with these people. You're clearly having a mental breakdown, just like the doctor said. I'm perfectly fine, mother, Sarah replied calmly. In fact, I've never been better. I've learned what it means to live with people who actually care about each other. Richard Hawthorne turned his attention to Marcus. You, he said with disgust. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but you picked the wrong family to mess with. We know exactly what you're doing. Marcus stepped forward, standing tall despite feeling intimidated by these powerful people. I'm not playing any games, sir. I'm just helping a friend who needed help. Friend? Victoria laughed cruelly. You mean the mentally ill heiress you're trying to steal money from? We know all about your little scheme. Janet moved to stand beside her husband. The only scheme here is yours, trying to lock up your own daughter to steal her inheritance. One of the lawyers stepped forward. We have court orders requiring Sarah to submit to psychiatric evaluation. If you interfere, you'll be arrested for kidnapping. But Sarah was ready for this. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Mr. Chen, they're here. Yes, we're ready. Within minutes, David Chen arrived with his own car full of people. Pastor Williams got out, followed by Dr. Martinez from the clinic, Mrs. Henderson from the diner, and several other community members who had gotten to know Sarah over the past week. Richard, Victoria, David Chen said formally. I'm here representing your daughter in her legal capacity as an adult. She is not going anywhere against her will. Richard Hawthorne's face turned red with anger. David, you're making a huge mistake. Sarah is clearly not mentally competent. Look where she's been living. Look at the people she's associating with. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. Mr. Hawthorne, I'm Dr. Elena Martinez. I've conducted a complete psychological evaluation of Sarah over the past week. She is perfectly, mentally, healthy and shows no signs of any psychiatric disorders. That's impossible, Victoria snapped. Our doctors have already determined that she's unstable. Pastor Williams spoke up. Ma'am, I've been counseling people for 20 years. Your daughter is one of the most mentally healthy young people I've ever met. The only problem I see is a family that treats her like property instead of a person. Sarah looked at her parents with newfound confidence. Mother, father, I have something to tell you. Over the past week, I've made business investments and started a partnership with Marcus Williams Construction Company. I've created jobs for 12 people in this community and started a training program for young adults. She continued. I've also worked with lawyer Chen to gather evidence of your illegal conspiracy to steal my inheritance. We have recordings of your conversations with corrupt doctors and proof of your plans to have me falsely committed. Richard Hawthorne looked shocked. You can't have recordings. That's illegal. Actually, it's not, David Chen said with a smile. Especially when it involves fraud and conspiracy. We've already turned over all evidence to the FBI and the State Attorney General's office. Victoria Hawthorne's confident expression began to crack. You're bluffing. We have too much influence for any of this to matter. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward. Ma'am, you might have influence with rich folks, but you forgot about regular working people. We've been telling Sarah's story to everyone we know. The local news wants to interview her tomorrow. Sarah looked at her parents, feeling sorry for them despite everything they had done to her. I never wanted to fight you. I just wanted to be free to live my own life and use my inheritance to help people. You could have been part of that. Help people? Richard scoffed. You mean waste our family's money on these nobodies? Marcus had heard enough. Mr. Hawthorne, these nobodies are the people who work every day to build your buildings, grow your food, and keep your world running. Your daughter figured that out in 1 week. Maybe you should learn from her. One of the Hawthorne's lawyers whispered something urgent in Richard's ear. The man's face went pale as he listened. What is it? Victoria demanded. The FBI just executed search warrants at our offices and medical facilities, the lawyer said quietly. They're looking for evidence of the conspiracy. David Chen smiled. Sarah's grandfather was very smart when he created her trust fund. He put in special protections against exactly what you were trying to do. All of Sarah's business investments this week have been perfectly legal and show excellent judgment. Sarah felt a weight lifting off her shoulders that she had carried her entire life. It's over, isn't it? Yes, Chen replied. By trying to steal your inheritance through fraud, your parents have actually lost any legal right to influence your trust fund. You're completely free. Richard and Victoria Hawthorne realized they had lost everything. Their plan had failed, their crimes were exposed, and their daughter was beyond their control forever. They got back into their cars and drove away without another word, followed by their lawyers and security guards. As the cars disappeared down the street, the whole community that had gathered to support Sarah started cheering and hugging each other. Sarah found herself surrounded by more genuine love and friendship than she had ever experienced. 6 months later, Marcus looked out at the construction site where his crew was building the new community center. Sarah's investment had transformed not just his business, but the entire neighborhood. They employed over 50 people now, and the apprenticeship program was training young adults for good careers. Sarah walked up beside him, wearing work clothes and a hard hat. She had learned construction skills and worked alongside the crew every day. How does it feel to see your dream becoming real? She asked. Marcus smiled. It feels like what my grandmother always said was true. When you help somebody, good things come back to you. I just never imagined they'd come back this big. Sarah laughed. You know what's funny? I thought money was the most important thing in the world, but you taught me that people are what matter. Money is just a tool to help people live better lives. Marcus put his arm around Sarah's shoulders like the big brother she had never had. And you taught me that dreams can become reality when good people work together. They stood together watching their community grow stronger, knowing that one simple act of kindness on a dark highway had changed both of their lives forever.